Okay, guys, I just want to explain something because I feel like I made a video talking about it, but I don't know if I shared all the details. Basically, back in December of last year, my dad had told me he was moving. He moved to a city that's like an hour and a half away. He didn't actually fully move until about June of this year. And so when I mean move, I mean like my dad was still living here at the house I'm at until June. Like he was here during the week because he had to wait for, his job stuff to transfer and stuff like that. That was outside of his control. And that could have taken until the end of this year, but it ended up happening in June. So once his job was transferred was when he actually moved. And when I say moved, I mean he just is not at this house full time. But my dad's stuff, like a lot of his stuff, is all still out the house. And that is present day. It's November. So even though my dad is not at this house, all of his stuff is still here. So when my dad had told me he wanted me to be moved out at the end of October, I was under the impression, well, this is the thing. I'm not upset at or mad at my dad. I do appreciate him letting me stay with him so long. He also was aware of a lot of the financial issues I was having with finding a job that pays well good enough, and also finding a job where I can actually afford my own place. And it's been a lot of ups and downs with that. So he understood my situation. He's been giving me a lot of grace, a lot of patience, which I do appreciate. So when he initially told me he wanted me to be moved out by October was pretty much a couple of days after my hours at my job had just got cut. So obviously being told I have to move out after pretty much just finding out my income was taking a hit was not a good situation, which is why I made the initial video about, I think it was like a series of unfortunate events, because obviously that's stressful to have to try to move when your income is decreasing. So that was a lot of stress on me. My dad has his own stressors, right? But what people don't realize, like the full situation is just like, and I don't even know if I want to explain it because it is like some things personal, but also it's just basically my dad's house could have already been paid off and I could have had a stable place to live. But basically, my dad did not want that option because he, I don't know. I really just think my dad is more focused on, how do I say this? Basically, it's like if you have a choice between having a bill paid off or making a much smaller amount of money each month. I don't even know how to explain it. Basically, the options that I had where I could stay at the house and have roommates. So initially, my dad had said, it's fine for you to stay here if you have roommates who can cover it. And I had found people who were able to do that, but my dad also, at the time he told me he wanted me to be moved out by October, basically said, oh, that's not an option for me anymore, which I wasn't expecting. So that was the other thing, because I did know people who could pay. Also, someone made a comment like, oh, you don't have a dependable rent history. I hope y'all realize I've paid rent at many times in my life. I paid rent all throughout college. I had a whole house that I paid rent for. I have a good rental history. I've never been evicted from a house. I'm laughing because I just thought of something. Anyways, the issue, or I guess really my main thing was I knew, like, I know I have to move out of my dad's house. Like, that's not the problem. My issue was I needed a little bit more time than what my dad was giving me, especially having my income cut. So I told my dad, look, if it's okay with you, I would like to have until December. I'll help pay for, all of the utilities and stuff, since I definitely agree that, those utilities and the utilities I should at least cover, because my dad's not using any of the utilities. But regardless of if I stay here or not, my dad would have to pay the rent. So I had told him, like, I'll pay the utilities. I just need some more time, like, and told him that verbatim. And the other part that I think people don't understand is my dad wasn't charging me rent because he knew, one, how much money I was making, two, he wanted me to save the money I was making to get my own place. Like, my dad wasn't, I don't know. And I was paying my dad rent, like, not a lot, but I was paying him consistently until basically my unstable hours. When I first started my new job, I didn't get paid for almost 2 months. I had a bunch of car issues I had to pay for. Like, people don't even know. Like, I pay for everything myself except for where I live. I pay my own car insurance. I put my own gas. I pay for my own food. I pay my own phone bill. When I had car problems, every car problem I've had this year, except for my broken window, which was the least expensive of all the repairs, I paid for myself. Beginning of this year, I paid about $900 towards my car, paid an additional $600 for my AC. What else? I think those are like the main things I paid for my car. So that it's already $1,500 I've put towards my car this year. And again, I still cover all of my own expenses. And the budget I'd had, like, my minimum amount I have to make to cover just minimum expenses is $1,200 a month. The first basically 6 months of this year, I was making, I want to say, around $650. So I've been in a deficit for 6 months this year, which is why I fell behind on credit cards. My credit score dropped because I couldn't keep up with the minimum payments I needed to make. Now, this is aside from, my shopping habits, whatever, because people love to bring that up anytime I have a conversation about any type of financial problems. Now, I'm not sitting here denying that I had my shopping issues don't contribute to things, but I don't like when people act as if that's the entire problem. It's a part of the problem, it's not the entire problem. Anyways, I didn't actually start. I started my current job back in June. And so I knew, like, I needed to save. But when I also initially started my job, there was some wishy-washy things with, was I going to get the hours that I needed? I've talked about it multiple times. Anyways, basically, my dad was aware that I was trying to find roommates for the house. And also, the other thing is, I can't bring roommates in if my dad's stuff is all still in the house. Basically, my dad is not fully moved out yet. He has a lot of stuff, and I don't think he realized how much stuff he still had left in the house. And right now, for personal reasons, I don't know when I'll be able to move all my stuff out, because I was trying to at least get majority of my stuff out so that my dad, because I guess he wanted to do repairs, but I don't know what my dad's doing anymore, because again, he has other things that he has to focus on right now. So I'm not trying to be an inconvenience to my dad. I'm not trying to be in his way. But I also think people don't realize, like, the house is not ready to be rented, not just because I'm here, but because the house is not ready, basically. So I feel like, I do feel like it comes off like, well, I do think too, like, maybe my dad thinks he has to wait for me to be moved out to move all his stuff out, which was why I was like, well, I didn't think I was stopping him from, moving his things out or getting repairs done, because obviously I wasn't trying to, like, inconvenience him or not allow, like, he can't do what he wants with the house, because obviously it's still his house. But I feel like my dad was more focused on me being moved out, so he wasn't really, I don't know. I basically just, like, I don't know if it's because my dad was waiting for me to be moved out or whatever, but basically the house is not ready for someone to rent it at this point regardless. And I'm not sure when it actually will be. So I told my dad exactly what my plan was, which he understands. Like, I told him, like, I just want to make sure I have enough money saved to cover 3 months rent before I move somewhere. And I told him I will probably have that by the end of this year, but probably not by the end of October. And so the pressure for me to be moved out by October was what was stressful. Not because my dad wants me to be moved out, not because I'm trying to stay at my dad's as long as possible. I do think, though, because this address has been my permanent address for the past 7 years, and also my sisters who are in the military have been using this address as their permanent address, it does kind of put it does cause a lot more, it's just, you have to do that much more paperwork with jobs and for tax purposes and figure out, like, what my permanent address is going to be. Also, my grandma lives with her sister. My grandma does not have space for me really at her house, because her sister that she lives with takes up pretty much the whole other side of the house, and it would not be a good situation for me to live. My mom already told me that's not a good situation. My mom also lives an hour away from where I work, and my mom has already told me, I wouldn't be able to live with her. So those also aren't really great options. But regardless, I think, there were other options that I was pretty much hoping would happen. Like, I was pretty much thinking, well, really, I was waiting because I thought I was going to be able to have roommates. I was waiting for, my dad to finish moving his stuff out, and then I could start, whatever I needed to do to get roommates, get my stuff out of this room, or just like clean up around the house so it's ready for people to move in. But because my dad took that option away for whatever reason, he didn't really say why. I think, you know, I mean, it just goes down to, it really just comes down to, I feel like there was an option that was a win-win situation for me and my dad, but that wasn't the option I think he wanted. So it kind of leaves us both in not great positions right now, because my dad's paying for two houses because he has to pay for both houses basically until the house is renovated and until he finds tenants to move into the house. And I wasn't trying to stop my dad from doing that. It's more so, you know, since I had initially wasn't planning to have to move out completely, I wasn't prepared for that situation. So, you know, I wasn't really looking at places like, oh, well, that way I can still stay here, don't have to change all my address on everything. My sisters can still have their address. Also, one of my sisters was wanting to invest in the house as well and, you know, do some of the repairs herself. And basically that way it could at least like stay in, I don't know, our family. But basically that just doesn't seem like what is happening. So the main thing is, my dad's house could have been paid off already and he wouldn't have had to pay two mortgages, but that wasn't the option he chose. So yeah, I guess that's all I can really say. And I do feel like that was, in my opinion, the best case scenario. But I don't think my dad saw it that way, because he kind of was, I think, I don't know. And I understand it too. Like in the short term, maybe he saw, I don't know. It's like the amount he was going to rent the house for. I don't know how much my dad pays for the mortgage on the house. I really don't know much of the details except, you know, the amount my dad still owes on the house is more higher. So, you know, even if he's making $2,100, he still has to pay the mortgage. So it's like he's not making a real profit because you still owe money on the house. Like, and I get it, like when people have real estate properties, because by the way, my mom has many real estate properties. By the way, my mom does it and she knows, you know, what all goes into it. So, and she's had very long-term residents at some of her properties. But basically, anytime you have tenants, it's just a lot more that goes into it. And I think my dad saw the opportunity to have like a investment property type thing, but I personally don't think it's worth him continue putting money towards it at this point. That's personally my opinion, but my dad sees things differently. I also think too, you know, my dad still works and, has all these other things going on. He's traveling most weekends. So, with all of that, I don't think that, he would have to basically hire someone else. Basically, with everything, in order to make money, you have to have money. And that's true for a lot of situations. I mean, I've heard of people who invest in properties, flip them, and make a profit either selling or renting. But in order to make income renting, you have to still recognize you're basically not making income, you're having the renter pay off your mortgage. Um, and maybe that helps you pay off the mortgage faster, but you still aren't really hitting a profit until the house is actually paid off. So if my dad is renting the house to someone, he still has to pay off the house. And with someone renting it, it's still going to be years before the house is actually paid off. Which means like the profit he's making is not really profit unless there's someone consistently renting the house. And also, with having other people rent the house, that comes with other problems. You don't know how they're going to take care of it. You don't know what other things are going to happen. So it's just a lot more, I think, that you have to think about. And I understand perfectly the first of all, I don't want to say my dad's taking a loss because the house wasn't ready to be rented, wasn't not going to be ready to be rented, even if I was moved out at the end of October, because the repairs my dad wanted to get done has not been started. He still has a lot of his stuff here. So it's just like, just because, this is what I really just want to say, that just because you have a plan or an idea of something happening doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. Like, the potential to make money off something is there, but you're not going to make money until, there are actions. Or I just want to say, like, you can plan for something, but that doesn't make the plan is not, is the effectiveness of a plan is as good as it being followed through, I guess. I don't know. And there's some things that you can't just, there's certain things that you just can't plan for. So anyways, I honestly still don't know what's going to happen, but my plan is to try to be moved out by the end of this year. End of this year. And hopefully just not have to, add any stress to my dad or anything like that. And I also think too, I kind of feel like I was the scapegoat in a lot of ways, as far as, I feel like there is a lot of things that I don't think were really planned out, but me being here was pretty much used as I was basically being blamed for certain things. But as I stated before, because I was under the impression I was going to be able to continue living here, and I didn't have a problem paying rent with my dad, to my dad, at all. That was never the issue, was I had a problem paying rent. It was, if I'm paying rent here, that's less money that I have to get my own place, essentially. And that was the only reason my dad was not charging me rent. But it's like I can pay rent here, and then it would just be taking that much longer for me to, I guess, save up to a certain extent. But with my savings right now, I'm just giving the money to my mom, who sets it aside for me. And then also, since I did tell my dad I was gonna help pay for utilities, I'm sending him money for that too. So I don't know. People really just need to stop assuming things, especially if they don't know the full situation, and don't know like the full scope of a lot of things. And the way people just assume, you know, I don't know, if you're making assumptions about things, that's really the problem, not me. Anyways, my goal was never planning on living with my parents um forever. I always knew that living with my parents had a time limit to it. It was never my main plan or focus. But again, because I had initially thought I would be able to stay here, I wasn't focused on moving or finding another place to live, because I was like, oh, I just need to find roommates. And then once the house was ready for people to move in, I would be able to have, I don't know. But again, there's been a lot of, I guess, kind of up in the air factors with this entire situation, which is why it's kind of been hard to plan around. And also, my dad still might end up just selling the house, because I don't know. There's a lot of other factors involved, not just, with me or my dad or other things. There's so much other things that people really don't know. And I'm trying my best to, explain without, oversharing things. But really, at the end of the day, whatever my dad decides to do, I'm not trying to be in his way of doing it. I just want to make sure I'm have at least a secure place to live, and that's been my focus, I guess. And I wasn't sure, or I wasn't thinking I wasn't gonna be able to live here still, so I wasn't planning on having to move until my dad told me that. Because I actually knew a couple of people who were willing to move here, but I didn't know when to tell them it would be available, because again, the house isn't ready, and a lot of it's just, again, a lot of other factors that people are assuming and don't know. So I honestly think, regardless of what my dad does or doesn't do, I just have to make sure I had my own plan in place, which was the plan I came up with. I just needed more time, and that is what I had asked my dad for, and offered to, help out with all the utilities and everything, which I would have done regardless. So, yeah. hope that explains something. Some things I'm not giving details for, you know, how the house would have been paid off and stuff like that, but the house could have already been paid off. And I do think, like, I don't know, in some ways, literally just watched this video basically that was talking about how, sometimes when we're solely looking for things to benefit just us, we miss out on blessings. So it's like when you're only looking at a situation to think of how you can benefit solely, and not thinking, like when you're looking at a situation and thinking like this is the best situation because you solely benefit, it's like sometimes you don't get that promotion, or sometimes you don't get that job, or you don't get that house because God sees that, when you get that thing, you are the sole beneficiary of that. And God wants to use you in ways that bring other people glory and that help other people. It's just like if I'm only always thinking about how I can benefit from a situation, it's very selfish and self serving in a lot of ways. Versus, if I'm looking at a situation like, well, how can I benefit and my dad benefit? And that's how I was thinking of the situation, because obviously I don't want my dad to be missing out on, rental income he could be making. And I don't want to feel like I'm basically like, um, you know, negatively impacting him. But I do feel like that's how this whole situation has made me feel. And I feel like I have, sorry, not a lot of control in it because it's all being put on me essentially. And that's what I think was making me upset, because it felt like, you know, I get that there's potential money my dad can make from the house, but I also feel like there's things that are impacting that I don't have control over, but I'm still being put, the blame's all being put on me. And it's like I'm trying to get out the way. I just didn't want to. Well, one, I needed some help moving my things, and I don't really have anyone to help me. But also because I don't have a place to move right now, I was moving all of my things to storage. So it was just, like I said, I think like I'm I don't want to focus on things that only benefit me, because I feel like that's selfish. So I'm trying to think, well, I don't want to, make my add any more stress or make anything harder on my dad. So I'm trying to do my best to, be moved out as soon as possible. I just knew that the soonest was not going to be the end of October. Because I knew that I offered to help with utilities and everything else, but I also want to make sure I can pay 3 months rent before I move somewhere, so that at least I know I have a place for the next 3 months. And then, I mean, I've explained what my plan was regardless, but I just think some people are so quick to assume like the worst. Like, I'm not looking at this as if like, oh, it's so unfair that my dad is kicking me out. It's just like I feel bad. I do feel bad that I feel like I'm in the way of my dad making additional money, and I'm not trying to be. I just like I said, was not really prepared to move and was also not expecting, um, was planning for, just having to find roommates. And I was fine having roommates at the house, but moving out now, I don't know. And I don't know why it was different. It's just like because it's one thing to have roommates in a house and it's another thing to have roommates in an apartment. I don't know. Like a house just has, I feel like, more. I mean, I guess for specifically this house, it's really just like where I've been the most comfortable for the past 7 years versus, having to move and pay rent another place. And I've said this before. I'm like, paying rent is such a scam. And really, it's just like every I get everyone has to pay rent in some ways. I mean, I would rather pay a mortgage than pay rent, but you don't always have that luxury because, rent is so high, people really can't even afford to save up to buy a house. It's like all of their income is going to apartments. And I feel like people don't realize that it's intentionally set up that way because rent, like eventually you don't have to pay a mortgage anymore, but with rent, you pay that for the rest of your life unless you buy a condo. Like until you own something, you have to pay money on it basically for the rest of your life. With the house, you eventually pay it off, but you always have to pay property taxes, which is crazy. In apartments, you're just paying to live in that place for 1 month at a time, basically for the rest of your life. So it's just like nothing is free. You're never not there's nowhere you can live for free except for I guess the street. Um or live in like a trailer or I don't know. But it's just like, you know, places not being affordable too. I think like obviously the less money you have, the more limited your options are. Like it wouldn't be an issue for me moving somewhere if I made more like a decent amount of money. I make an okay amount. Like I'm not on the poverty line. It's so sad to say. Like I'm not on the poverty line, but I definitely cannot afford most places around me. Like there's very limited places that I can actually afford. And because I have more limited options, I don't have the freedom of just, oh, this place is nice. It's just like having a more limited budget makes it a lot harder to find affordable housing. And basically, like, the low income housing options are far and few. You'll be on a wait list basically forever. And by the time I think I mentioned this too, like I had applied for low income housing last year when my dad told me he was moving because I was like, okay, well, at that time, that's the only place I would have even been able to afford. And like there's nowhere I could have afforded to live on my own. I would have had to have a roommate of some sorts, but even with a roommate, wouldn't have qualified for anywhere because I was literally only making at most 1,200 a month. But that was like my bare minimum, but it didn't leave anything for like housing, which is why the beginning of this year making $650 on average a month is wild. And I was still paying my bills, still paying my car insurance, still paying my phone bill. I honestly don't even know how I was paying for the shopping I was doing. Like, it's just crazy how I even survived off of that little, but I made it through. But anyways, I think like all of the places that I can't afford either don't have a lot of availability, or I would have to be on a wait list. And if I'm on a wait list, am I really the best candidate knowing my credit history? Which is why like the only way I will feel confident is having 3 months rent at least saved up. So that is the best update I can give you. I think my dad's doing the best he can with what the circumstances are. I'm doing the best that I can with what my circumstances are. You know, my dad's not trying to be mean, or uncaring. I think he's just under his own, stressors, and so am I. So it's just like, it's not a great situation really for either of us. I do think, the added stress is really like, I'm not in a great place financially. The thing is, my dad makes a decent amount of money. Like, my dad is not broke by any means. I think it's just him having, well, I don't know. I don't know the full scope of my dad's expenses. I'm not his accountant or anything, but I think, you know, he was planning on basically, he budgeted based off of income he did not have, maybe. I don't know. Well, I do think that is actually true, because he didn't know the area he moved to would reduce his salary. So there's that. Also, someone said something about my dad wanting to retire. My dad is retired. He works because he wants to work, not because, well, I'm not going to say he has to. I mean, my dad's still fairly young, but, he still works, but he's not, he's retired. And actually, both of my parents are retired. Retired, but they both still work. Anyways, no one wants to be a burden to other people. It's really just more like, one, I don't feel that confident in my abilities, because I think someone else said, well, and basically it's just like being self-sufficient. I don't feel the most confident in that, because I would feel more confident, I guess, if I made more money, which just sounds kind of like I don't want to say a cop out, but it also is like, to a certain extent, it's true that, someone who makes a decent income would be a lot more confident in their ability to take care of themselves, because you have, a stable financial situation where, okay, I know I make enough to afford this. I think for me, it's been hard to feel that, because I don't feel like my finances are really where I would want them to be. And I said before, it's just like partially because of bad financial choices I made, so I'm not blaming other people, but also because of, jobs I've had, I don't know. I'm tired of switching careers, and feeling like I have to start all over again. And I also don't want to have to like just chase money with every job. It's just like money is not gonna solve all of my problems. Some of it is just, being making better financial decisions, which I am doing and learning, getting better at every day. But I also think, I don't know. It's been like, I don't feel that confident in my ability to, I guess, take care of myself, partially because of my financial aspect, but also because maybe I've been, well, probably been more comfortable living with my parents than I realized. And I don't want to say it's like I've lived on my own many times throughout my life. Like, I'm not scared to live on my own. I think it's more like I'm scared to have to depend solely on myself because I'm not confident in myself. I feel like that's a lot of I think it's like a lot more pressure to a certain extent where, you know, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I just feel like I don't feel confident in my ability to stand on my own 2 feet because of, I guess, past things that I've dealt with, but also because of I don't feel very financially stable. Like, my income is still kind of fluctuates, my hours, and some of it is because of extenuating circumstances. Like, I got sick last week. I missed 3 days of work. I didn't have enough PTO to cover all 3 of those days. Some of it's because my hours fluctuate due to call outs, scheduling changes, other things. And my goal, I guess, initially my goal was to try to find another job, and that ended up not really panning out for me for various reasons, but I really just think at the end of the day, it's more than just you have to be confident in yourself. I think a lot of people are confident in their circumstances. Like, oh, I make a good amount of money, I have a good paying job, so I can afford XYZ. I'm not really confident in my ability to get jobs also. Like, that's not something I really feel that confident in, because I feel like a lot of jobs I've had, or even a lot of jobs I've wanted and interviewed for, I would not end up getting. And again, maybe that goes back to that video I watched about, when you are looking, when you're looking at a situation or a job that you really want, or a promotion, and you're looking at it from a perspective of, if I have this job, how much that will benefit you and solely you. you don't see the big picture type thing the way God does, you know. Maybe in some ways me being in this situation teaches me more, helps other people in some way. You know, I think it's really easy for people to judge someone when they are on the outside looking in. And this is not me making excuses. I think no one will ever fully understand someone else's situation because you're not in their shoes. You don't live with that person or see the things that person goes through. So you do kind of make a lot of assumptions. And when I share just my personal experiences, I am not sharing them because I'm trying to pass blame or try to, you know, victimize myself. Like, I'm not even saying I'm a victim of anything. I'm literally just saying, like, this is my current situation. This is my experience. This is what I'm doing. This is what I planned. And for some reason, it's still, people still will find a way to, I don't know, make it, just make it negative in some way. Like I said, I really don't know at this point what the final solution will be, which is why my only focus has really been trying to save as much as I can. And my savings are money that I'm giving to my mom. And then, I am looking at places and trying to find the best option. I talked with my dad today and he basically said just make sure it's in like a safe area. You know, because the income one of the places I was looking at, probably not in the safest area, but it's a place that I can afford. And, I do think you sometimes have to give up certain things if you want to be able to afford your own place. And the person that I was trying to be roommates with, I don't know if she's actually able to move, because there's also other circumstances surrounding that. And I don't know if I really want to roommate at this point. I'm not against having a roommate if that's what it takes, but the process of finding a roommate, if you don't already have like a friend or someone you trust, making sure you guys have the same outlook as far as cleanliness and, respect for the other person. It's just a lot. I mean, I've had a lot of roommates. I've had roommate drama throughout my college experience. So I do think I've had slightly better experiences living with random people. But actually, I think my best living situation was my junior year of college. Was it my junior? I actually think, yeah, it was my junior year. Y'all, I lived 5 different places when I was in college. I pretty much moved every year. I lived 3 different apartment complexes, a dorm, and then I lived in a townhome. The townhome situation was the best. Y'all listen to this. My townhome was a 3-bed, 3.5 bath, 3-story townhome, and it was $1,200. This was back in 2016. So I had 2 roommates. We each had our own bathroom. We had our shared living space was chill. My one friend lived in the basement with her pet. I had a roommate upstairs who basically was barely there. And we each only had to pay $400 for a freaking nice, brand new townhome. I will never, I will probably never see that same townhome. Probably is at least like $2,400 a month now, because these rent prices is crazy. Inflation is crazy. But I had it so good then. I had it so good then. I think the most I paid in rent in college was 500. Like my first places, y'all, were like 375, 425. I think I paid at one point. And then I think the cheapest place I lived was like 375 a month. Now that was with roommates, but college dorms, like you could sign a lease and they would find a roommate for you. So you didn't have to like find it yourself. But then I think the most expensive place I lived was my super senior year, and it was like 500 a month. And I still had my own bathroom, a walk-in closet, and everything I needed. You know, I was used to having walk-in closets, y'all. That's why I had so many clothes. Anyways, it's like, you know, the cost of living has increased dramatically, which is a big reason I think more people do struggle living on their own, especially without roommates. But at the end of the day, you know, I have to figure my situation out for myself. It is no one else's problem but mine. I am not putting my, you know, I'm not really putting my trust in myself at this point, though, because I'm like, there's only so much I can do, y'all. What I can do is, you know, not be wasteful with my money, save as much as I can, that type of thing. But as far as finding a place I can afford that actually has availability, that's random, out my control. I don't know. There's just always something, like, you can't control everything. So basically, I'm just gonna have to trust and believe that God will make a way for everything. Everything will work out in the end. For me, for my dad, for everyone involved. Like I said, I'm not trying to take anything away from somebody. And I don't think, you know, I would hope I said that, you know, both of my parents have my best interest, but I also do think, you know, it's like at some point you do have to take like a leap of faith and stand on your own 2 feet. And I was kind of hoping to do that, but like out of state, like one of the jobs that I had was hoping to get that ended up not happening was a job in Connecticut, but it was like a pretty decent paying job, and I was like, ooh, this job pays really well, so I could definitely afford my own place, you know, wanting to have a job, I guess better job stability. I guess I would feel a lot more confident. But right now, I feel like it's like things are okay, but not the best that they could be. So there's still a lot of kind of stressful things that I'm trying to be like, okay, like I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to do that, but we're going to try our best. And yeah. Anyways, I hope this explained better the situation. I might turn comments off or just hold all the comments because some of y'all be rude and I don't need y'all want that on y'all's negativity on my page or all up in my comments. So yeah, that's all I have to say. I've been talking for an hour. Also, by the way, did I mention it is, what time is it? It's definitely past midnight. I told y'all I've been having kind of insomnia. Oh, it's 1:08 a.m. Love that for me. So I've been talking about this since midnight. Anyways, we're about to get to bed. So peace out, Girl Scouts.